Hey guys, welcome to Bar Z. My name's Stan, and today the parts that are out in front of you are some of the pieces from my 618 surface grinder. This is the hydraulic rod for the Reciprocator. Now I was getting a little bit of leak out of the rod end, right out here at the head, but I just kind of wanted to document this as I take it apart. And I thought you guys might be interested in seeing what all's involved here. The tube is a 1 1/8 inch. I don't think I can get you down to look at that. You're probably too dark down there, but it's a 1 1/8 bore. It's got a 3/8 chrome rod. And my rod was in really good shape. Nothing wrong here. It was just the rod end seal had gone bad. Even the bushing inside the head was okay. This is the rod end here. What I have done already is I have taken some of this apart. This simply threads into here, and I had to hold it in the 3-jaw chuck in the lathe and put a big crescent wrench on this block, and for that to crack loose, it was stubborn, so it did need to be held very securely. Don't just crush it in a vise. Be really careful with a bore. And then when I did get it loose, this goes in through the seal and everything, and I started pulling it out. After I removed, there's a piece that goes right here. There's a little ball connector for a swivel where it connects to the machine, and then I started pulling out this way. Then I felt those threads right there on that seal, and I go, you know what, I don't really want to pull it force it that way. I got down here to the piston end, and you can see we've got a smaller diameter, and I was able to take all those parts off, and then this just comes slipping right off of there, and you don't have to pull that seal past the threads. So that's pretty important. You don't want to damage your rod seal, your dust seal, or even worse, your rod guide. You got a bronze rod guide in there, so you don't want to damage any of that. And these are pretty interesting. Let me show you the order. I haven't cleaned anything yet, but let me show you the order of what goes on there. It's got 2 cup seals, as so, and they use a spring, like a spring tensioner. So this is everything that goes on. First of all, you got a washer. These are all a very snug fit on the shaft. And that one doesn't even want to go on now. I need to clean before I put anything back. Yeah, I got boogers and junk all over it. Oh, I can show you. I can give you the idea of how it works. We've got a spring. Then there's kind of a spreader here that goes on. This all fits on the shaft. See, that's a kind of a spring-loaded spreader there. Then your cup goes on right on that, and that little bit of spring tension keeps your. That's what pushes out on that rubber cup. And then there's an actual, I guess you'd call it a piston, and then that stacks right over again with a whole nother assembly right here. So one's for the push and one's for the pull. That whole assembly slides on, and then there's one nut on the backside here that captivates it, that holds all that captive. So pretty interesting little setup there. I thought it was pretty cool. But I do want to document that, and I thought you guys might be interested in seeing a lot of this stuff too. Let me get all this apart without it exploding. Yeah, I need to still polish that shaft and everything. There's some corrosion down in here. See there, it looks like water had gotten into it sometime in its life. So we're going to clean all that up, polish everything, make sure everything slips off and on this shaft really nice. Those threads are pretty sharp. I'm thinking that's what might be catching that washer. Yeah, right there at the end of the threads. This is supposed to slide all the way up to this shoulder right here. But we'll get it all cleaned up and ready to go back together. And I've got a little hone, a ball hone that'll do. I can get about halfway down this tube with it. Then I'll be able to come in from the other way and do the other side. So no big deal to get in there and just give that cylinder a quick hone, get some fresh seals on the piston, and more importantly, replace that rod seal. Now I was able, I've got this awesome place next to me. It's called O-Rings and Things. I went in there with all my stuff, and there's what I walked out with, even the hard seal. That little seal right there. That goes on the end, that goes right on the end of that head right there. So let me get this all cleaned up, and maybe I'll bring you back for an assembly, so we can assemble this thing and get our surface grinder not to leak anymore. All right. Bring you back after all this is cleaned up. There we go. All right, stubborn little bastard. All right, well, that's your dust seal. And then down inside, we should be able to pick out the actual rod seal. These little hook buggers are pretty handy. I've been using dentist tools forever, but a viewer sent that in, and gotta love it. All right. Oh, they got like a spacer here. Okay. That's what's pinching down on that rod seal. Let me see if I can dig that seal out of there. It's just the rod seal is just an O-ring. Get this hook behind it. Oh, I got the seal and the spacer all in one. Look at me go. Okay, so that's the actual rod seal. What I dug out of there, that's just more like a dust seal. So that's the little fella right there. All right, let me get this cleaned up and we'll put it back together. And just like that, I'm back and everything's clean. Look at me go. We've got our new O-ring and this little spacer goodie. It kind of, I think that just kind of squishes down on the O-ring. But your O-ring can just literally just drop in. And then this guy just falls in on top of it. And when you drive in your, yep, just like that. When you drive in your seal, it'll push down on your O-ring. So pretty interesting. I'm just going to give it one little shot of oil down in the hole, just to keep everything lubed up. And then this little fella just drives in. And I think what we're going to do with that, let me, I got to reposition the camera, it's in my way. I'm just going to use the vise to press it in, but let me move the camera. Okay, I just got a little piece of plywood in the vise, and it looks like we're started pretty square, so let's send her home. Yeah, feels good. I'm just going to push it down till flush and call it a day. So there's your seal and your spacer and your dust boot, if you want to call it that. That's the whole head assembly, and that was the whole reason we took it apart right there. We were leaking right there. All right. Okay, now we're going to kind of put this back together in reverse order. Our head assembly is done. We just wiped down our rod, and we've got oil down in there from when we assembled it. We're just going to put this in from the piston side. Get past our dust seal, get past our rod seal, and into our bushing. Want to be very careful going in. Make sure you got no burrs or nicks on any of your shafting that can nick that rod seal on the way in. All right, so that part's done, and we can move on to. Let me tip you down just a little bit. We can move on to our piston end. So let's get those parts rounded up and start putting our piston together. We slipped it on. I want to remind you, we did slip it on through this diminished size here, and so we didn't, snag the seal, the dust seal, or the rod seal on the way in, or mar up the bushing for that matter. You know, there's a bronze bushing that can be seen through that port right there, and mine is still nice and tight. Can't feel any play at all, nothing. So. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think I just needed a rod seal. Now we're ready for the piston end of it. You notice I got two of everything all the way down, except the actual piston itself. Now, you're probably going to notice, hey, there wasn't an O-ring there before. I didn't like the drag marks I saw. I saw some drag marks down the side where I could see where this was, dragging on the cylinder a little bit. So I went ahead and cut a groove in it and popped an O-ring in there, real tight groove. I don't want that O-ring rocking back and forth, so this groove is actually about 5/1000ths undersized from the O-ring, so it sits in there nice and tight. And it's sitting about 5/1000ths proud. I cut the base of it, so I've got about a 5/1000ths crush on that thing. This will deform and turn. That's a square bottomed hole. I didn't make a round bottomed hole, so this will deform and eventually turn into a square after it's crushed in there. But I'd rather it slide back and forth on an O-ring and create some extra friction than sit there and drag on my cylinder. So I did make a modification. Now, rod end assembly, we're going to start with a washer. That slips down and bumps into that shoulder. And then we're going to come in with a spring. Excuse me. And then there's a two-piece set up here. And I polished the inside of these so they slipped on the shaft really nice. You don't want them, they were really bound up. I had a hard time getting them off. And then this is a little expander. And I believe that we want that to float around on there as well. So these two go like this, and this all goes up against a spring. As so. And see, that floats in and out really nice, which it wasn't doing before. This all gets pinched in there, and there's your action on that. Now your seals, this one goes as so. And you see that expander, see how that's cut at an angle? That pushes right up against the lip of that seal, and that's what holds it against the holds it against the bore. Now we're ready for a piston. And another seal. And another expander. That's not an expander. Here's my expander. So let's get this put together here, as so. So there's this inner sleeve and the expander all together. And this is getting complicated, holding all this in. We get a spring and our last washer. And then you got to get a nut on this whole Marianne and tighten it all up. I do this I throw this in the 3-jaw chuck on the lathe and tighten it up. That's how I got it off. So, okay. All right, no more worries about all that coming off. But those little expanders, those are what push out on our oil seal and create a seal in both directions, and the spring just keeps some tension against the whole thing. But that's the whole rod end of it. Let me go get this tightened up, and we can drop this assembly right in the tube. The tube's already honed and ready to go. Okay, we're back from tightening up our nut here and getting that all done. And you actually have to be really careful now, because everything's so free floating now. Those spring-loaded things want to go in and expand those seals. Remember, they had a little 45 cut on them. So I'm trying to keep these out. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get it in our tube. So let's give it a shot. Let's see if we can get past. We need to get past these leading edge threads, and they've got a little taper in there, kind of a little lead-in angle. So let's see if we can get this thing in there without expanding that seal out in those threads. Okay, so far so good. We're past my O-ring. I can feel that lead-in edge. I just don't want to roll a lip backwards or, damage a seal or whatever on the way in. There's some more. But we are definitely stuck now. All right. Well, there it goes. All right. Past my lead-in angle. There we go. All right, rod in. Okay, not much left to do now except thread all this malarkey together here. And that's as easy as that. And that actual O-ring goes down into that lead-in angle, and and seals up in there. And I can feel it getting tighter as it goes in, so I can feel it going into that lead in. And you just tighten down there, done deal. All right, back to the lathe, crescent wrench on here, tighten her up. Okay, so we got the cylinder back in, and we're ready to burp the air out of it and get it running. I'll be able to control the spool valve here manually. I don't think any of this is in my way. I think I'll be all right. But we'll give it a quick test before we put the table back on. Let's get the phase converter running and get machine running. And we're probably going to hear a lot of burping and spitting because that cylinder doesn't have anything in it. Alright, looks like we got a winner. A little jerky at first getting that air out of there, but it's working nice now. I'll turn you a little bit so you can see that motion. I'm actually going to try to throttle it here and control the motion. You can control the speed of it. There's the absolute lowest speed you can do. If I open up the spool valve a little bit, and flip it the other way. The table's what catches this spool valve here. Alright, well, I think we got a winner. And our seal, if you take a good look at that seal, I don't know about you, but I don't see anything in there. I don't see anything leak into you. Yeah, it looks pretty dry to me. Alright, I think our fix is done, boys. Okay, well, it's been running now about 15 minutes, so I just thought I'd let it cycle. You can see the puke bucket that we had to run. Everything was coming out this side. And we might be able to catch a peek at it. I got a little flashlight with me. Okay, you can catch a peek of it down there in the back, but that thing's dry as a bone. That's the rod end, that bright shiny square you see down there. That's the head of the hydraulic cylinder, but she's running dry as a bone. So, leak is gone. Pretty happy. Okay guys, well, I'm back on track. This all happened to me when we were doing testing on our control panel. So I had to stop what I was doing, fix an oil leak, and now we can get back to it.